What spirits rule or law would you break if you could in the name of experimentation?
Ooh, and that is a good question.
I'm quite a law-abiding citizen, and there's not many rules that I would be willing to break.
Well, I'm not really a rule breaker. I like to disrupt the norm.
Did you design this question for me?
There are some very strict rules we have to abide by. I know by and large they're there for a good reason.
Maybe some playing with the raw material.
Rather than breaking a spirit rule or law, I'd rather create one.
I think the most frustrating part of the regulations that distillers have to comply with isn't so much being able to make one product or another, it's what you can call a product, what category you have to fit into. I think the standards of identity don't do a very good job of addressing what's been happening in craft distilling. I think there's a need for some modernization.
Currently, American single malt whiskey doesn't have a formal rule governing its production in the United States. But we really think that there needs to be one, which is why we wrote one more than 4 years ago, and we're hopeful that that can get passed into law sometime later this year.
To be considered rum, you have to be fermenting something derived from sugar. So it has to be molasses, sugarcane honey, sugarcane juice, Sometimes it would be great to be able to do a mix and match, add another raw material in with the molasses and see what you get, see what other congeners you can bring, what else happens in fermentation. But that would definitely be breaking the rules.
In Canada, we are allowed to blend in 9.09% wine or 2-year-old spirits. I have the oldest recipe book in Canada from Hiram Walker back in 1886. And you could see back in that time he was blending in Jamaican rum and prune wine. An odd concept, quite really, was that why was he doing this? But apparently at the time, Jamaican rum was seen as premiums. As you go out to the history and you look through the recipe books, you could see them making light base whiskeys. They would add that up to 100%. That's how recipes were designed. And then they would have this other 10%. So they would do that, 100%, 10%. So 10 divided by 110 is 9.09%. We have been doing this since the start as Canadian whiskey. And it just adds a top layer of note, complexity, and makes Canadian whiskey diverse. The rest of the world does not recognize it. And it's unfortunate because that's been a part of the blending practice of Canadian whiskey since its inception.
And focusing on bourbon, I wish that we had put standards around how long it could mature or what the requirements were for bourbon to be qualified as a bourbon. But it also makes it fun. I enjoy the challenge because we break them anyways, and we just have to call it out. If you're gonna put whiskey in a Chardonnay barrel like we did many years ago, and it was considered taboo at the time, and you just have to tell people what you're doing. We're all about honesty at Woodford Reserve, so it's really not a big deal for us to share that out there. Bourbon maturation and how long what's the minimum maturation, because we're kind of one of the only categories that doesn't really specify.
But if there was any one part of it that I could break, then I think it would probably be to allow us to use different types of wood in our barrels, not just oak wood, because I think there's some other exciting flavours we could introduce by doing that.
The framework for making Irish whiskey is a very good platform to allow us to experiment while protecting the heritage and tradition of Irish whiskey making and keeping it a world-class drink. So, for example, there are elements of flexibility within the Irish whiskey making framework to allow us not only use oak but other wood types as well. So we've experimented with things like chestnut, cherry wood, acacia wood, and also we can change around our distillate mash bills should we wish to do so. So for me, I think there's a nice element of flexibility within the existing framework for making Irish whiskey. So there's not many laws that I'd be wanting to break.
The thing is, in Scotch whisky, we actually have quite a broad range of things we can do already. There is the Scotch whisky order, the legal boundaries that we have to work within. Even within that, we can mature in so many different casks, from bourbon to sherry casks to new charred oak, Armagnac casks, rum casks, Marsala, different wine casks. So much, and there's probably not many casks I've not experimented with in the past 28 years. And I must admit, there are some things that I've done in the lab which would break the rules nowadays, such as maturing in different types of wood, so apple wood or Brazilian cherry wood, and compared that with maturation in oak. I think I would just kind of mix things up with different cask types.
When I was young, I thought, all these rules and AOC rules and stuff were great because they created and promoted a very honest framework. And I still think this. I think there's merit to this. But we have to think that now everything is traced, everything is controlled, everything is published, and transparency is much easier right now. Transparency is key not only in quality, but it's key to create trust between producers with one another and also producers and of course our customers. This being said, I think we need framework where we can still continue to create. Spirits are folk art, they are an art form, but it is an art form that is alive. And we need to be able to create, we need to be able to push boundaries. For example, in cognac, I've broke the rules by aging cognac in a chestnut barrel, by aging cognac in a barrel made of acacia. It's delicious, it's part of cognac heritage, and it's unfortunately illegal since 1945. Well, it's a rule that we broke, and yes, we had to sell this product, we call it French grape eau de vie, but this is a rule that we sure broke, and when we make and we create rules, we have to be careful that yes, they guarantee integrity, this is paramount, and that's what rules are for, but they also allow for honest, transparent creativity.